issue in short order. Good luck, Palak. Thank you for your efforts. We are here today for council meeting number 46 on Tuesday, November 16th. Council did have to go into closed, so as a consequence, we've already approved the agenda. We've done disclosures of interest. We're now coming out of closed. And before I go to the consent agenda, I just would like to make a small shout out. The Santa Claus Parade is coming back to North Grenville on Saturday. Thank you to many of you. Some of you are in this room. Grenville District Community Association, I think local BIA and Chamber, and so many businesses and organizations who have opted to put in a float. I know, I think Emergency Services is likely involved in some road closures alongside the OPP. Parks and Rec is also playing a role, as I understand it. So please stay tuned. There will be a live stream of the Santa Claus Parade. So if anyone doesn't want to leave their homes, there will be a very professionally produced live stream, courtesy of a partnership that the Grenville District Community Association has forged with a live streaming company that in fact is just housed out of the same building as the Salvation Army. So lots of fun, and don't miss the opportunity to participate or watch. So colleagues, with that in mind, I'm looking at a consent agenda. Quite a few items under the consent agenda. Of course, any council member has the prerogative to pull an item from the consent agenda. If they wish to, consent agenda items are considered routine and typically do not require further discussion, but I'll look to you colleagues. Is there anything you wish to pull in terms of adoption of minutes and resolutions that have emerged from a variety of advisory committees? Seeing nothing from council, then I will look for a mover and a seconder to adopt the items under the consent agenda, please. Thank you, Councillor Barclay. Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Then we will call the question. All in favor of adopting items on the consent agenda? Thank you. Okay, perfect. That gets us to the meat of tonight's meeting a little more quickly. So it's at this time my pleasure to welcome, I think, Ms. Amy Martin? No. Okay. Who's present? Okay. Ms. Hilary Genoux, who is presenting an update on the Downtown Grenville Community Action Plan and Community Improvement Plan on behalf of the Office of the CAO. Welcome, Ms. Genoux. And obviously you can take off your mask. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. So good evening, Council, and thank you for hearing this presentation tonight. I'll be providing you an update on the 2021 Dcap, that's the Downtown Grenville Community Action Plan, and the Community Improvement Plan, the CIP, and just giving an overview of 2021 and where we're headed for 2022. Next slide, please. So Council approved the Dcap and CIP on March 2nd of this year, and this slide lists the programs that were approved under this program. So that includes the Facade and Signage Grant Program, which is a 50% matching grant for up to $10,000. The People Make the Place Grant, which provides a $5,000 grant per residential unit created, and that's for between 4 and 5 units created, and that's a new program created this year. We also instituted the Building Fees Grant, which provides 50% matching funds up to $2,500 for the creation of 4 or more residential units. And the Tax Increment Equivalent Residential Grant, which provides a grant equivalent to the municipal portion of the property tax increase, starting at 90% and then decreasing by 10% each year. And of course, the Development Charges Waiver for downtown developments. Next slide, please. So there's been a slight change since this presentation was created. So in 2021 to date, we've given out $12,609 under the Facade and Signage Grant. And we'd like to suggest that to make the grant program more accessible to property and business owners, we remove the 5-year cycle, which is currently in place, and change it with a 1-year cycle. So that is, businesses and property owners can apply for the grant program every other year. As well, other Dcap recommendations are moving forward, such as the Community Planning Permit System, or CPPS, reviewing parking improvements, changes to the building and planning process, and achieving the bike-friendly status for the BIA. Next slide, please. And so the next slide just shows you some pictures of some of the projects that were completed. So on this slide, you can see the Grenville Youth Center, Their front entrance got a little bit more appealing, but a little more safe as well. Next slide. And then this is the commercial entrance at the Market Rose. So again, they just improved their front walkway there. The railing had been down for quite a while at the start of the summer, so it was nice to see that back up. Next, oh, thank you. And then just a few businesses got some new signage as well. And we didn't get photos in time for the presentation, but 139 Prescott as well, a new business to downtown, successfully went through the program and got a really nice facelift. So in conclusion, we are recommending continuing the Dcap and CIP initiatives in 2022 with the slight change to the 1-year cycle from a 5-year cycle. And hopefully we can keep allowing businesses and property owners to improve and revitalize downtown. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Any questions, colleagues? Councillor Barkley?
A couple of questions, but my first one is the decision to change the facade program. I understand it was unsubscribed. Is that the main reason that people are anxious to apply for that grant but are prohibited with the 5-year cycle?
Yes, thank you for the question. So we did have some funds left over for sure, and it was changed to the 5-year cycle this year because we found the same people were using the funds over and over again for smaller projects. We wanted to try to encourage some bigger projects. And yes, so, and there's just not, we also eliminated residential buildings from being able to receive the grant this year. So there's just more room and money available.
Since I've been paying attention, the CIP has included a facade program. I'm wondering if we've just exhausted that as a tool downtown, if we're not getting the same number of applications to date, whether that money might be diverted or put into some other programs.
Yeah.
Any thinking on that?
I think it's potentially something to look at. We did have a few businesses who reached out who were ineligible because of this 5-year cycle, the new 5-year cycle. So there was some people that were denied.
I have another question, but
Sure,
I'll wait.
go ahead.
Oh, okay. Part of this suite of incentives to get more residential development, multi-unit residential development downtown, and I agree, you know, people do make the place, and we're looking to try and have more people living downtown. That'll people want to have a livable city and walk to the grocery store or the library, et cetera, et cetera. So 2 questions related to that. One is, I guess, more to do with the CPPS, which is part of what we're looking at approving later on this year, about minimum parking requirements. I know parking is always very controversial downtown. There's people who think we have more than enough, and other people think we don't have enough. But certainly for residential development, I wonder, and this is more directed to the Director of Planning, whether when we look at the CPPS, whether we might remove the minimum parking requirements for residential development. It's not really a question, I guess it's a comment. My question to you has more to do with the other element of the Dcap, which is the downtown development charge exemption. It's less than 2 years before it runs out. So is there any consideration to extending the development charge exemption beyond March 2023? Which would give developers a longer runway to consider building multi-unit residences downtown.
Yeah, for sure. That was discussed in March when you folks approved this program, and we have it written into the program that we'll review the extension next year for 2023 to see if we can make it match the rest of this program.
We'll be reviewing it next year. Is there any possibility of reviewing it earlier, once again, to increase, you know, the length of time people can take to develop their proposals and run it through planning, et cetera, to build multi-unit residences downtown? Can we bring it up earlier?
Yeah, I
in the
think
year?
that shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, great, thanks.
Good. Oh, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Appreciate that. Thanks.
Thank you, and thank you, Hillary, for this presentation. And my question is regarding the bike-friendly downtown designation and what actions are moving ahead to achieve this at this point. please?
So this designation is through the Ontario by Bike organization, and it's a little different than the bike-friendly community designation, which people might be a little bit more familiar with. This designation really focuses on getting businesses bike-friendly and bike-ready to attract, bike tourists and biker community members. So we're working with the BIA right now and soliciting businesses to get on board. There has to be a certain mix of businesses in order to get the designation. So we've had a few sign up, and we're working to get a few more right now.
And will that include the businesses supplying or providing bicycle parking and locks and racks, et cetera?
Yeah, so there's different criteria depending on the type of business, including bike parking, whether they have washrooms, whether they have healthy food on the menu, et cetera.
Okay, thank you. And the other question regarding parking improvements, I have heard some concerns about people getting ticketed if they're parked for a certain length of time, but there is no time limit to park at Riverside Park or at the library. Am I correct with that?
I'm not sure. I have to check on that. I do not think so. I think in the bylaw, when we looked at this for the Dcap, creation of the Dcap, there's regulations on overnight parking, but other than that, no expiry on amount of time.
And would it be through the BIA that we could encourage businesses downtown to have their employees park, say, at Riverside Park or at the other parking lots, and leave the parking spaces closer to their businesses for clients? Would that be done through the BIA?
I'm not sure if it would be done through the BIA, but it's definitely something we can consider. We're planning to do a parking study as part of the Dcap, so we can consider that.
Okay, because I think if their employees are taking a spot close by and they're there for 8 hours, then it's pretty tricky for the customers who just want to be there for 1, 2, or 3 hours. So, okay, thanks very much.
Anyone else? Okay, so we would get another update on the CIP program at what point, Hillary?
So as the program's written right now, in order to allocate certain funding to it, we'll be coming to you at the end of it, or near the end of every year, around budget time, to ensure that money is allocated.
And your intake for the CIP is what again?
It's basically all year. We'll take applications up, or projects have to be finished by the end of the year. So we just, warn businesses and property owners that they do so in enough time before the end of the year. But it's ongoing.
Given limited uptake, do you plan to enhance promotions, or I don't know what exactly was done or to what extent there was publicity around this? Do you have other suggestions for how we might be able to highlight that there is an opportunity here?
Yeah, I think we can definitely ramp it up a bit this year. We didn't get the applications finalized after the program was approved until June or July this year. Outside of what we did this year, we can also look at doing a mail-out, which we've done in the past. The problem with the mail-out is that it goes to property owners, so we just want to make sure that information gets funneled to businesses as well, particularly for the facade program. And since if council chooses to remove the 5-year cycle, it'll also make it a lot easier to do the mail-out too.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so continuous uptake at this point, right?
I think so. I think year over year we will.
Okay, I think that may be helpful. Okay, and certainly I think we can do our part, Council. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Hillary, you just mentioned the program length. People have to have their applications in before the end of the year. The project has to be finished by the end of the year.
The project has to be completed by the end of the year.
Okay, so I think that could be a stumbling mark, obviously, if you get towards the end of the year. I mean, it's difficult to get contractors, it's difficult to get this work done. Would you guys be considered looking at potentially a 365-day, from the start of the application, you've got 365 days to get it done or something like that? Would that make more sense so that we'd have uptake all the time, everybody has the same amount of time? I mean, projects can come to a business, in November, and they got to get something done. Now they got to wait till January. I don't know. It's just a thought. And I think the uptake also could be problematic, especially downtown, just because of cash flow during COVID. Lots of businesses are stuck, and even though they have a matching grant, they may not have the cash to match, right? So I think that's probably part of the problem. But anyways, how did you guys come up with or was it always, closed off at the end of the year?
So it used to be that projects could carry over, and we found problems with not only our end on the finance side of things, but also we had a number of projects end up not being completed. So we would be holding the money for these projects, and then they just wouldn't get completed.
I guess, is there a better way to evaluate the capacity for the, I guess, the business, right? Because residential owners are no longer eligible. Is there other criteria that could be used to evaluate the capacity for that business to actually act on the matching grant program?
I'm not sure I understand.
Anyway, maybe something that Matt, right, Mr. Gilmore can look into, just to see if there's a way of ensuring that if we're going to say yes, right, that we have some measurement of a business's ability, right, to make good. Because often there are competing choices. Sometimes, obviously not in the past year, but in previous years, we've had some competing choices in terms of, which businesses or homeowners in that instance to say yes to. So hopefully there's, metric that can be used to support that. If someone doesn't act within, 3 to 6 months on some element of the project, then perhaps that would suggest that they're not going to proceed, and then that money can be once again liberated for somebody else.
Yeah. I think obviously this is a more administration issue on your end, because if I take an application out in January and I don't finish the project by the end of the year, same thing, other than it's within your window when you guys are doing your books, right? So maybe we need to relook at that.
Yeah, and to Mayor Peckford's point as well, no funding is allocated until an agreement is executed, and the agreements aren't executed until the project is finished.
But commitments are made, right? Right. We make commitments, right, to those businesses. I totally understand the money is in advance, but we still make commitments, right? And in certain cases, certain entities are turned down, certain entities are said yes to, and it's just a shame if they're not able to act on it, so.
And we try to be as facilitative as we can.
Sure.
We talk to the business or property owner and, is it reasonable that you'll be able to complete it by the end of the year? And if not, we can look at the next year and getting their application in early.
Okay, great. Well, perhaps, Deputy Mayor, we can do a kind of mid-year check-in on this, because I think we're very interested in knowing if this sort of revised program, if you will, is kind of resonating, right? And if it's a good use of funds. So I think perhaps we could get a report in June, just to help us understand if the promotion, awareness raising, and the actual granting program is, in fact, what the community needs.
Sure.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so with that in mind, I think you are looking, Heather, we are looking for a motion in regards to,
Yes, please, Your Worship.
yep. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Strachan, I apologize. It's really, my sight lines are very poor. I love the screens, but the sight lines are bad. Thank you for waving your hand. Go ahead.
Thank you. So I see on the bike-friendly side of things, there's 3 different pieces that are happening all at the same time in different areas. I know that on the tourism side of things, Ms. Curry's working on designating routes throughout the community from a tourism perspective. The ATAC is working on a bike-friendly designation, but not in the sense that it's businesses on board with bike racks or anything, but really to make sure that it's a safe cycling community as well. I guess not necessarily anything looking for you right now, but I would like to see that there's some coordination amongst those 3 parts to bring that together. Bike racks are great. I think it feeds into what the ATAC is looking at as well, that would be one piece to it, but obviously they're looking at a little bit more as well. But I think it would be a huge bonus for that discussion for the downtown as well.
Yes, we did talk with ATAC and the Parks and Rec Department when we were looking at moving the bike-friendly designation forward, and we talked about doing the bike-friendly communities designation all at once, and just timelines, it wasn't going to work out. It is a lot larger of a process for the bike-friendly community designation, but yeah, we'll continue to talk to them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Scanning the room, seeing nothing. I'll ask for a move and a seconder. Deputy Mayor, do you want to move? Seconder, please. Councilor Strachan, thank you. And this is so that we authorize that the general reserves be utilized to fund the community improvement plan programs for 2022 up to the amount of $175,000 rather. And we approve and enact bylaw 11421 to amend the downtown Campbell Community Improvement Plan. And I would add a third, which is that a report be made, a mid-year report be made to council in June. Are we good with that, colleagues? Okay. I'll call the question then. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nuke, for coming. We appreciate it. Okay. So, with that in mind, we'll look to hear from Office of the Clerk. Ms. Babcock-Cormier, I think you're presenting on the operation of snowmobiles within the Ferguson Forest Centre and adjacent municipal highways.
I am, Your Worship. Thank you. Just drawing up the presentation. And there we go. Before you this evening is a bylaw which would operate to restrict the use of snowmobiles on certain municipal highways adjacent to the Ferguson Forest Centre. The restriction of snowmobile access within the Forest Centre would be to designated snowmobile trails only. So there's two implications. One is with respect to certain highways adjacent to the FFC, and the other is with respect to FFC lands. Recreational snowmobile use has increased during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the FFC has advised the municipality that there's been an increase in snowmobiles operating on FFC lands beyond the trails and potentially causing damage to nursery operations. The municipality, the FFC, and the Kentville Snowmobile Club have met to discuss possible remedies. So this is a demonstration, or a sketch of the request from the FFC. So this blue line here is the existing snowmobile trail, and it actually pushes out here to County Road 43 and loops over here. The FFC, who are present this evening, would like to remove this connection point right in here. They would also like to install a jersey barrier and also block access. This is the high school. It's hard to see here, but this is the high school. There's actually a fire route here, but there's an opening in the back gate to the high school, and the FFC would like to close that off. They would also like to make the red, which are currently Honor Way and Veterans Way and Anniversary Way, closed to snowmobile use. This portion right here would have to remain open for vehicular access because there are actually two residences which exist back here. So to mitigate the potential for damage, the FFC has requested the municipality restrict the ability of snowmobiles to traverse part of Veterans Way, all of Anniversary Way and Honor Way, and remove the connection of the existing trail to Highway 43. The FFC has also requested that access to St. Michael High School along with the backfield be restricted. Staff have considered the request and have proposed that this connection remain. Now, this snowmobile trail here is not part of the MOU with the municipality as far as we can tell from our records, which means that that trail exists at the pleasure of the FFC. So we believe that this connection, or recommend that this connection remain, as there are some high school students who use this connection in order to gain access and park in St. Michael's High School. Additionally, this is the connection route used for snowmobiles to gas their vehicles and also to visit some restaurants that are located along Highway 43. We're proposing that a jersey barrier be inserted here and here, such that snowmobiles could not access this part of Veterans Way, and that, again, Anniversary and Honor Way would be prohibited with respect to the use of snowmobiles, but they wouldn't be blocked because we do have, again, cars needing to traverse that because there are residences up behind here that will need to continue to access their residences. They actually maintain those particular residents, some part of that road system during the wintertime. So it again shows the blue trails being the existing snowmobile trails, and those would remain. So my screen just blacked. There we go, now it's back.
Could you just go back, please?
Mm-hmm.
So the red lines, just to be clear, are the areas that you were proposing would be prohibited?
That's correct. So the area between the jersey barriers here, cars wouldn't be able to get down. The
cars would still be able to access here and here. And the bylaw doesn't deal with cars, but that's the practical effect of having the Jersey barriers installed, is this small portion here would be blocked to snowmobiles practically, but it would also practically block vehicular access for that portion. So,
Isn't that the case anyway? Don't at a certain point cars get blocked from usage of that section?
so I think that it's not necessarily maintained all season.
Exactly.
But the Jersey barriers there would certainly restrict that during a period where perhaps the snow may be not quite down enough, but we'll have inserted the Jersey barrier in anticipation of the snow.
So basically, the proposition would be to confine vehicular access, right, to Anniversary Way only.
Correct, anniversary and honor.
Indeed.
And then, of course, down this bit here of veterans that's marked in green, which is where the municipal center and the back end of St. Michael's is.
Indeed, but there's a hard stop there, right?
Yes.
Because just in front of St. Mike's High School, once the road isn't maintained.
So, yeah, so right behind the snowmobile trail. So that's where we're proposing that the Jersey barrier would sit so that snowmobiles can continue to access that trail.
Okay.
Councilor O'Sullivan has a question.
I'm sorry. Once again, thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you. So does this mean that anyone coming to get to the dog park or the Toboggan Hill would have to go down 44 and make a left turn to get into Anniversary Way in order to get to the dog park? They wouldn't be able to go down that green section and the red section anymore.
That's correct. So there would be a Jersey barrier here, and there would be a Jersey barrier here, which means that vehicles couldn't get through here. They would have to come along here
They can't access it from
and back up.
43, right?
Yep.
Into Anniversary Way. So the primary
Yes.
maintained road, 12 months a year, would remain open for cars to access the dog park and the snowmobile? Do I have that right?
I believe so. Yes, Director Dunlop is nodding yes.
I do wonder, though, how many people come from County Road 44 who would now be forced to go all the way to 43 and down and make a left-hand turn across 43, which is pretty busy.
The stretch between those barriers, though, is not accessible in the wintertime, right? That's not maintained.
Exactly.
It's not maintained.
So,
And plowed, not plowed.
Thank you. Yeah.
It's always closed in the winter?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay. With respect to enforcement, and sorry, one other thing that I should mention is the bylaw also prohibits snowmobile traffic outside of trails that are maintained. So any, travel by snowmobiles outside of those trails would not be permitted.
I need to stop you for 1 second because I was an avid cross-country skier, never had a negative encounter with a snowmobiler, in fact, so thought actually the coexistence more or less worked, but appreciate the need perhaps for more order in some respects. But the snowmobile trails are not on the road, they're on the side, right? So when you say snowmobile access would be prohibited, it's not on the roadway, but it's really adjacent to the road. It's my understanding of how the snowmobile trails have typically worked.
So the prohibition is two parts. So number one, the prohibition deals with the traveling of snowmobiles along the red portion indicated in the diagram, and then it also prohibits travel outside of the blue trails. So to the extent that a snowmobile leaves the existing trail and then traverses across FFC lands, that would not be permitted. And there are certain exceptions for FFC staff and invitees, so contractors, for example, municipal staff, OPP, our bylaw enforcement.
Okay, carry on.
Okay. So with respect to enforcement, the bylaw would be enforced by the municipality during regular operating hours. Enforcement is typically complaint-driven. It's not anticipated that there will be regular patrols or enforcement activities. The OPP will be required to enforce outside of operating hours. The Kentville Snowmobile Club has undertaken in some of our discussions to renew its education efforts concerning the proper use of trails and to increase its oversight. So with respect to, again, to COVID-19, there's a number of new users with respect to snowmobiles, so educating, and increasing a presence. And that's my the conclusion. So I've included a bylaw with respect to the package, and the staff recommendation is that council approve and enact that bylaw, restricting the use of snowmobiles within the Ferguson Forest Centre lands and municipal highways, as set out in Attachment 1, which duplicates the diagram included in the presentation with respect to the staff recommendation.
So I understand we have the Campbell Snowmobile Club here as well as the chair of the Ferguson Forest. So and my understanding is you may both wish to speak tonight to the bylaw, is that correct? No, just one of you? I certainly invite either of you to speak, or any representative of either group is welcome to speak. You don't have to, but you want to speak. And Bruce, would you like to speak at some point or no? Okay. So take your time. Okay. Hello.
What? So before we start, I just want to start by saying that the corporation is very pleased to receive an email from Hillary regarding a customer service and public engagement review by consultants for municipal partners. Mm-hmm. And we were named, so we are partners of the municipality, which excites us.
Excellent. So glad.
To that end, the executive committee of the Ferguson Forest Centre Corporation would like to meet with council sometime in the near future to discuss how this partnership may better benefit both of our organizations, and to tell you a little bit more about our operations and where we're going and what we're trying to do. You seem to have a lot more cooperation and interaction with other agencies and organizations, where we've been just kind of hidden in the background there and, you know, out of sight, out of mind. Well, we don't want to be out of sight, out of mind anymore, and we want to be more proactive with the council and with the municipality.
I think we haven't wanted to get in your way, but we'd love to sit down and chat. Not a problem.
So with your permission, I'll deal with Heather to try to schedule something?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay. So I want to thank the municipality for implementing this bylaw. It's very important for us for the protection of the nursery property, but also the safety of your citizens who use our recreational facilities. And you know yourself, Madam Mayor, that over the last couple of years, we've been inundated with people from your Toboggan Hill to cross-country skiing, to disc golf, to the forest trails. It's truly amazing. So with regard to the bylaw, I want to introduce Wes Herring, who's the chair of our Property Management Committee for the corporation. And he'll provide a few observations with regards to the bylaw and some concerns that we have. Over to you, Wes.
Welcome, Mr. Herring.
Well, thank you. No, and I'd like to echo the thank you to Gary Dyke and to Heather for bringing this forward on our behalf. What's been proposed certainly is seen as being helpful, but it does not address some of the most significant issues that we have with snowmobilers on our property, and the interaction between the snowmobilers and other users of the property, with the cross-country skiers and with the significant increase of use of all of our properties right now due to COVID, although we think that this is going to likely be status quo now. We have some particular issues. The biggest one is the connection from County Road 44 to the roadway allowance that the club has coming off Link Trail. That's still in green and under the municipal proposal on your map there. That allows access for non-club members into the property. They have not been respecting the rules and using the trails. And it allows the students at St. Mike's School to leave the back of their yard onto Veterans Way, and then basically into the fields. And they come right across the fields, and they do not use the club trails. They're coming across the trails, going into Anniversary Park and onto the creek. We've put fences up. They ripped them down 3 times last year. And they did significant damage at Anniversary Park, and they do a lot of damage in our fields. We were asked last year whether we could put a price tag on that. Our crops are 4 years in the field. It's very hard to determine damage by snowmobile traffic on a field when the crop we don't see for 4 years. So it's hard to damage. But the biggest problem that we have now is the interaction between the snowmobilers, non-club members for the most part, and all our other users. We're estimating now we have more than 60,000 users to our visits to our trails and parks annually now, and that's growing. We have a new cross-country ski trail that starts from our equipment shed, in essence, near County Road 44, and starts our grooming there. And by allowing snowmobiles down Veterans Way in that stretch, they're interacting now with the cross-country skiers. They're using the cross-country groomed trails to access the property, and these are, I'll reiterate, these are not club members as a rule. We've stopped a number of them. They don't carry club stickers or OFCA stickers. They're basically snowmobilers that maybe they've used it in the past, but park in the municipal parking lot or our own parking lot and access the fields and trails. We feel that the bylaw needs to include that stretch of road from County Road 44 to where the link trail crosses Veterans Way. The rest in red, we have no issue with. That's fine. And the biggest issue we've had, and when we asked for the bylaw, even when they don't ride on the road themselves, their existing rules allow them to ride on the verge of the road. So closing them off doesn't provide anything until we have a bylaw. The problem we have with putting a barrier at where the link trail access comes out and Anniversary Way is they go around the barriers. And where do they go around the barriers? Into the fields. A barrier on the road that's not maintained does not provide any security for our property or our users at all. We've had a number of them on top, well, frankly, on top of the toboggan hill with their snowmobile. We have them on all of our trails. We have them on significantly using the cross-country groomed trails because they are flattened and look nice and neat. So we need to try to restrict access. We have an MOU with the Kemptville Cross Country or the snowmobile group, as well as the cross country ski group, and we can manage the interactions between them. The bylaw, we feel, is necessary to restrict other users from abusing the property. The small stretch marked in A there is not covered in our MOU with the Kemptville Snowmobile Club. We have not generally allowed access, although kids accessing the school do that, although they come right across, right from Anniversary Way across. They don't necessarily come down from the trail at all. They come out of Anniversary, for the most part, in our experience last year, they come out of Anniversary Park, come down to the front of the property along 43 and down to the front of the school. They're not using the designated trails at all. That Section A will take up with the, as far as we're concerned, take up with the Kemptville Snowmobile Club and determine between us whether that's necessary in our MOU with them. Our biggest concern is that stretch from 44 to the Link Trail connection.
Right, but that is the major road behind St. Mike's and the municipal building.
That's
is that
right.
correct? Right, so
Yep.
that is used, for example, to access the dog park, right?
No, well, it's not maintained in the winter.
I understand that. So I know in winter it closes. I skied every inch of, certainly every cross-country ski trail. I skied multiple times. So that's the lens I have when I look at this, because I would
Yeah,
access.
no, the cross-country
Yep.
ski trail actually, right by our equipment shed, across
Yes,
from the equipment
exactly.
shed,
Yep.
goes back towards the forest and follows
Indeed.
Our
Yep.
nursery road
Right.
through
But
the
your
back.
your proposal, and I know we're going to hear from Mr. Robinson, just so I'm clear, your proposal to limit access to snowmobiles, right, on what is an existing road up to the point where it's not cleared anymore, right, behind St. Mike's. What does that achieve precisely? Because there's delineated trails here, you're suggesting that the snowmobilers aren't using the delineated trails?
Oh, they're using the blue trails.
Indeed. Okay.
The sort of non-compliant snowmobilers are using Veterans Way and our fields. And what we would like is Veterans Way, end to end, virtually closed to snowmobiler.
Right.
The other thing that concerns me is the skiers. As you know, Madam Mayor, right at the beginning of that trail, you have people congregating, putting
Yes.
on their skis,
Yep.
falling over because they've never skied before,
Yes.
laughing and joking, and snowmobiles whipping by there. There's been complaints last year about excessive speed of these snowmobiles. There was a few close calls. So that to me is as critical as everything else, is skier safety. That is not a good place for a snowmobile to be, because sometimes when they're getting ready, they're behind the shed at the start of the trail, the shed on the right, and they're hard to see. And as they come out of there, okay, if there's a snowmobile coming down, there could be an accident. We considered, and the reason the trailhead is there because our equipment is stored in that building, right? So it's a logical place to start the cross-country ski trail.
Okay, great. Any other questions, colleagues? Deputy Mayor, and I know we'll also invite Mr. Robinson to speak, to share his perspective. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Sullivan. And Deputy Mayor, did you have something? I apologize. I think I missed the order on that. Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor. This will be directed to staff as a comment and maybe a question, but obviously the staff did some research on this and determined that the section in green would, is not to be, this is the way you want it written into the bylaw. Can you explain why you want it this way, not where how it's being suggested by the FSC? Thanks.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So leaving the portion that is green accessible to snowmobiles means that those snowmobiles with their trailers can park in the municipal center and be able to have a sufficient parking for those vehicles, to be able to go down that little piece of Veterans Way, to be able to pick up that trail in the blue. Additionally, again, the consideration of the fact that there are certain students from St. Mike's who do snowmobile, so making sure that they're able to access or continue to access by snowmobile in the winter, and also to maintain, like I said, access just to that blue trail piece, keeping aside the section that's marked A, which is subject to further discussion between the FFC and the Snowmobile Club, which would allow for access for gas and restaurants.
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. My question is, when you spoke about people putting their skis on and maybe falling over, etc., I'm not sure where you're talking about that equipment shed and where this cross-country ski trail starts, because in my experience, all of the cross-country skiing tends to start from the parking lot at the dog park. That's where I would say that probably 90% of the people are starting the trail there and parking at the dog park parking lot or down at Anniversary Way. So I'm not sure why someone would begin, like I understand that your equipment is stored in that shed, but that would be where you would start with the groomer, not that people would start skiing there.
Okay, so for the same reason that snowmobilers like to park in the municipal parking lot, cross-country skiers park in our parking lot plus the municipal parking lot, walk over with their skis and start to ski. That is really the beginning of the ski trail, okay? And we get a lot of people starting from there using the parking lots that are available to them. And sure, there are people who start at the dog park as well, and other places as well. But we have noted safety concerns there, and we were apprised of safety concerns from that area in the past.
Okay, because I understood that you just said this road was not maintained during the winter, so people would have to drive down 44 and access in from, no, he said not this, that's why people couldn't get, oh, okay, couldn't get down to Anniversary Way or the dog park. So, I think that kids who do snowmobile to school, my next question then is, have you gone to St. Mike's School and spoken with them and had an opportunity to do some education with the students who do ride snowmobiles to school? Have you spoken with them, had an education session with them?
No. But I think
Indirectly, but we haven't made any presentation at the school.
So maybe at this point, colleagues, unless you have more questions, we'll hear from Mr. Robinson. Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Barclay. I must confess, and Councillor Strachian, thank you, I appreciate that. I must confess, I use the trailhead in that green-blue section, so not the dog park or toboggan sled parking area, but on the other side. That's reliably where I started the ski trail. I have to say I never had a single interaction with a snowmobile, but clearly perhaps my timing was different from most snowmobiles. So I'll go to Councillor Barclay, we're going to go to Councillor Strachian, we'll finish this round of questions, and then I would invite Mr. Robinson to come down. I know otherwise it may be a very long night. Okay. So Councillor Barclay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to remind Council and anybody listening that the Ferguson Tree Nursery is a social enterprise, and the funds that are generated there are used to provide the recreational amenities of the Ferguson Forest. I mean, I think their needs should be paramount over the recreational use of the Ferguson Forest, because without the Ferguson Tree Nursery, it would cost the municipality a great deal of funds to make it available to the general public. So that's my perspective on this issue, and I've got an open mind, and I'd like to hear from the Snowmobile Club what they think their needs are, but that's where I'm prepared to land.
Councillor Strachian?
So I don't disagree with you, Councillor Barclay. I think we do need to make sure that the Ferguson Forest, their equipment, the irrigation and so on isn't damaged. However, I don't think that we can't all play nicely together. I think that there are ways of doing this. So I'm an active user of the Ferguson Forest. I mean, I'm in there in the summertime. I'm in there in the wintertime skiing. I didn't have any issues. I've been snowshoeing. I haven't had any bad interactions there. I know that there were many discussions, heated discussions about the cross-country ski trail there last year because everybody had different opinions about how things should be used, where people should walk and so on. And I think it's part of the growing pains of bringing something like that new to that area, and sharing a space is always much harder than having free reign over a space. So I think that there's quite likely opportunities here for education and engagement. I wouldn't say that all the damage is done by high school students. I've certainly been around in this area long enough that there are lots of people who are adults and should know better, and probably are club members, who don't necessarily follow the rules and stay on trails. And this isn't just about Ferguson Forest. It happens everywhere. I think that bylaw, I know, is complaint driven. However, I also know that it was looked into last year, and I know that bylaw enforcement did proactively take on the opportunity to educate and talk with snowmobilers. And some were completely unaware of where the trail was. It's a challenge on snowmobile trails here or elsewhere that people don't necessarily know where the trail goes. And, you know, some people may plead ignorance, may be as opportunistic ignorance, but others just don't know where things are as far as trails go. So I think that there's an opportunity to discuss with perhaps the principal at St. Mike's to be able to find a way to educate. There's possibility of maybe even having OPP or bylaw enforcement do, I'd call it a blitz, not in the way that they're going to be ticketing, but an education blitz to make a presence known, to be able to say, you know, this is a privilege to be here, so let's all behave accordingly. Otherwise, things can be shut down, and I think that that's well within the purview of the folks who are here tonight to go down that path should things not be adhered to. I have concerns about that stretch from the 44 being closed off entirely. I don't think that that will necessarily solve the problems, because I think, as was already articulated here tonight, there's ways around barriers, and there's other paths that people will take which may only make things worse at the Ferguson Forest Center and for everybody using that space. So I personally would think that the proposal that's up on the screen right now does seem to achieve a certain amount of what is being sought after on all sides, notwithstanding the A portion there that you mentioned that you'd have a conversation with the Snowmobile Club, and that using education and enforcement, engagement, a whole bunch of E's, that I think we could probably achieve a better working arrangement for everybody who's using that space.
Thank you, Councillor Starkian. Any final comments? No? Okay. Anything else? No. Okay, so we'll invite Mr. Robinson down. Welcome. Just turn on the light. Thanks.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Bruce Robinson, the trail coordinator for the Kempville Snowmobile Club. I've been snowmobiling for 51 years, 47 of that in North Granville. So I have some experience. This is not the first time that I've dealt with problems in the Ferguson Forest. It's been a cyclic thing that has happened over the years. When snowmobiling first got going, everybody was running everywhere. The club formed to try to control safety, damage, and the nuisance factor. And that's basically what the club was formed in the first place, to address those three main problems. And I hear those three main problems here again, and it's basically the cycle is at a peak right now because our membership is at a peak. And we're on our way to 700 members this year. When I joined in 1984, we were 125 members, so you can see how much it has increased. One thing I've learned about snowmobiling is that most of your riders are looking for, they're heading into Ferguson Forest for a destination. They either want to get to the gas station at Ultramar, the restaurants, or back at the very back end to the boat launch to get onto the river. And one of the things that I have found is that if they come into the Ferguson Forest on a trail, they're more liable to stay on a trail. So if they enter on one of our trails, it's marked very nicely where the corners are, where the turns are, and how to stay on the trail. If they enter from any other access point that is a non-official trail, then what we've heard is that they go all over the place and they're lost and they didn't realize there was trails or anything else. So I think we have to do a better job of getting the traffic aligned up on the trail, that they're not entering from anywhere, that they have to be entering on the trail part of it. If we try to block them from going to St. Michael's School or to the gas station, it's kind of like trying to shut the water off. The water will stop here, but it'll go around the barrier and find its way to where it's trying to get to. So I've found the best way to control traffic is to give them a path to get there and keep them on that path as best as we can. One of my suggestions is that if we think that St. Michael's students are some of the problem, I think the OPP should be involved to check that these students actually have a snowmobile driver's license, because although you can be issued a driver's license for a snowmobile at the age of 12, you're not allowed to be out on your own with the snowmobile until you're 16. So I'm thinking there has to be a lot of 12 to 16-year-olds who are using their snowmobile or their parents' snowmobile, probably illegally, because they don't. I'm thinking that if you're in grade 12, you might be 16 years old, obviously, but if you're in grade 9, 10, or 11, you might not be 16. So I think that's one of the things that we should have OPP check on, is the validity of their license, and you might be able to restrict some of the traffic that way. We are committed to helping with this problem. It's part of our mandate to. We don't want to be shut out of the Ferguson Forest. We've had access to it the whole 50 years that the Kempville Snowmobile Club has existed, and we'll do our best to try to help the Ferguson Forest executive and the council to try to get these problems under control. And I just want to make it clear that the Snowmobile Club understands and is going to try to help. One of the things that's happened already, and the OFSC has more than the Ferguson Forest, obviously, is having problems with off-trail riding. In order to buy your permit this year, you have to watch a 45-second video of Stay on the Trail. You can't buy your permit without seeing that video, and that's one of our main messages for this coming year, is to all of our people who buy permits, is the message is very strong to stay on the trail. And it was mentioned earlier that a lot of these, hopefully a lot of these problem cases are not members, so we don't have access to educate, or if they're not buying a permit, they don't see the video, they don't see the safety messages of the OFSC and all that. It's not mandatory to have a permit to own a snowmobile. You can ride, you can't ride on the OFSC trail, but you can ride the river, you can ride the creeks, you can ride the ditches and stuff like that without a permit. So the unpermitted snowmobiles, non-members, are a problem, I believe, for us to try to address. But you have our full resources on trying to solve the problem, and I thank you for a few minutes to educate you on what we've been
Don't go yet.
what we're up to.
Don't go yet in case there's questions. I guess, Mr. Robinson, in your experience, I sort of share Councillor Strachan's concerns. If you block that green portion, then you're forcing snowmobilers to really go anywhere, right? Because some of them will be determined, even if they're non-club members or club members who are very well educated, how else would they access parts of the Ferguson Forest, right? They'd have to go up to 43, ride the ditches or the trails in 43 and go down again. So I have safety concerns for the snowmobilers. I'm an avid cross-country skier. I bring my kids out. I do it at dusk. It's not always well-lit conditions. And I understand the concern or vulnerability some people may experience on cross-country skis. I saw efforts for better signage last year. I saw some of the snow fencing. So I want to indicate to the FFC, from my perspective, that I absolutely get this sense of vulnerability you have on skis. You're not going very fast. And, you don't make a lot of noise. So a snowmobiler definitely has the advantage. But that being said, we have to represent all users. And I do feel great concern that if we cut off that link for snowmobilers, then we create a whole other set of problems. So in your experience, is there a way that you ever reach those non-users, or is there anything the municipality could do in partnership with FFC to make sure that we better sign, that sort of green area to really urge non-users or non-club members, to understand these are multi-use, right? These are multi-use areas with sometimes competing or conflicting residents, right? Who are non-motorized vehicles. I'm just wondering about really being very clear to anyone entering the area, if we keep this green part open, that they absolutely must slow down. I understand there's some plan for signage, for increased signage, regardless of what we do here. But do you have other recommendations for how we might be able to address it?
In my opinion, most of the troublemakers are probably living within the town or close to the town, because if you're from Oxford Mills, you're not coming in to play around on the toboggan hill or to run up and down the ski trails. You're coming in to get back to the river to go to North Gore, or you're coming in to get gas or food. So if we have signage that, I don't know, signage is the people who are acting out and probably driving too fast and that don't stop to read the signs, and it's your signage has to be very large, very blunt, very short. It's got to hit the impact on first glance. So a wordy sign isn't going to do any good at all. So my only advice would be, maybe we can do something with the local media, and maybe we can do something with some big signage that shows to stay on the trail and to access points and that of the trail. We can do a better job of making sure that we can sign it that it's a multi-use trail. I don't think we have very many, if any, multi-use trail signs on the Ferguson Forest. We could do a better job there.
Okay. Sorry, thank you. Councillor Barclay and Deputy Mayor, and I'm scanning, and Councillor Sullivan. Okay.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Bruce. Thank you. It's obvious you've had a lot of experience and knowledge about the behavior of snowmobilers, both those that respect the trails in the community and those that don't. Just once again, going to the green section, which is listed as a snowmobile access road, but it's not part of the OFC trail system. And as you mentioned, there's a great campaign being conducted to stay on the trail. I'm also picking up on your comment that the people who are joining the OFC trail at Veterans Way, the green section, are probably local people. They're not passing through. I think one of your comments also was people are passing through the Ferguson Forest Center to get to the river or to get to gas or a restaurant. So would it be fair to say that you're in support of the recommendation or you would support the concerns of the Ferguson Tree Nursery about eliminating that green section or access to snowmobiles?
Not being there on a regular basis, I'm not sure how much that green section is where the headquarters is, and that's the main road that goes in there, like the
Yes, the greenhouses and the
garage is
sheds.
there and
Yep,
everything
yep.
on the
Just behind
just
the
off
high
44.
school. Yep,
Yep.
you pass the
Yeah.
War Memorial. Yep.
So as a snowmobiler coming in from out of town to go somewhere to do something, I never access that trail except when I come in to help out with the ski club, and I park at the garage and I take my snowmobile up there with the drag to groom the ski trail. I have seen snowmobiles on there, and I guess they're coming in from 44, but there's no trail, no OFSC trail out on the end of 44. We're way up past the public school. On the walking path is where our access is. We have the access on the walking path north of the public school. We have the access at the boat launch. We have access at the water treatment, or the water pumping, the old pumping station on the creek. And we have access off of 43 highway coming in on the driveway that goes to the water, to the sewage treatment plant. That's our 4 access points that have trails that go somewhere, you know. They're not dead-end trails.
But the blue is the snowmobile trails. Is that correct? Are we reading that right?
The blue on the bottom, that comes off 43 and goes up the driveway of the sewage treatment plant. The blue at the back, at the top there, is off the old pumping station on the creek. So we come off the creek and go onto the land there.
But if you were coming from the other side of 44,
But on this side, there's no trail. At the end of that green, going west from the green, there's no trail. Because you're over, it's too built up in that area. At 40, there's nothing west of 44, put it that way.
right at this, right where you are, certainly when you go up, right? When you go up, then to the top, we see that blue line. That is one of your trails? Those other blue lines are your trails?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm, yes.
So it's the access point into FFC, right?
Yes, I'm not sure if I'm a town snowmobiler and I come in off, I don't know how I'm getting up 44 to get in there unless I'm, you know.
But you have trails, you're partly accessing Settlers Grant now, as I understand it, right, for a short
Yeah,
section?
but that's up north of there. Now, the green trail, you could come in with a truck and trailer, unload and leave from there. That probably happens. I don't know. I'm not around the Ferguson Forest enough to know if that happens regularly or how often that happens.
But the minute you hit the blue, right, the minute you hit the blue, you are on Campbell Snowmobile Club Trail.
Yep.
Right, and you, as a member or a non-member, right, you are implored to follow the trails, correct?
Yep.
Right, so that is the understanding, right, of members. I understand it may not be the understanding of non-members, but the minute you hit the blue, you are compelled, to the extent possible, right, to stay on the trails.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Sorry, Councilor Barkley, are you good? Okay, Deputy Mayor, go.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Bruce, can I call you Bruce? Question for you. There is no, as you just stated, there's no trails west of 44 there that meet up with this green road that we're talking about. So students are, if we block this off, as we mentioned, and the other gentleman mentioned as well, and you put barriers up, the kids are going to go around anyways, or whoever it is, you know, if they're breaking the law, they're going to go around those barriers. It'd be very difficult to block that off, I'm assuming, for what I know of this road. And I don't know if there's any room to add a trail there to connect to your trail or not, if that would be feasible, I don't know. But that's just my thinking. The concern I have, the kids are going to school there, and if they're of age and legal, and we talked about how to eliminate the ones that aren't, but if the ones who are, if they can't access there, then they are either going to try to go around something, or they're going to try to go all the way up 44 or 43 and then try to come back on your trail. Mm-hmm. And I think that's even more dangerous than what we're talking about, because I don't want to see kids, because somehow they're getting to that road on 44, they're probably just traveling the ditches or whatever along 44, I'm assuming, if there's no trails, or that's how else we're going to get there, right? Or the edge of the road. So I would be concerned if we're able to block it, which I doubt we will, but if you're able to block it, you're going to force these kids to go, because they're going to take the snowmobiles no matter what we do, I think.
That's my point. If I said like water, if you block it here, it runs around and finds the easiest access to get around it. And we have to be careful not to force them into a more dangerous situation than what they're, like, I mean, we're trading, you don't want to trade off safety for damage or safety for nuisance sake. Safety trumps everything else as far as I'm concerned, and we have to keep safety as number one.
Okay, I have Councillor, I think O'Sullivan is tracking in. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much for everything that you do with the Kemptville Snowmobile Club, and your comments about safety and doing the right thing and doing the best thing. And I would like to, you kind of jumped ahead of me here, but I would like to publicly thank you for your volunteer efforts for grooming the cross-country ski trails all winter, because that was, they are a wonderful asset. And so thank you very much for doing that. And I know that the Kemptville Snowmobile Club also was very helpful in getting upgrades done to the rail trail, financial support to get the rail trail in the great shape it's in. So definitely a great community partner, and I appreciate everything that you're doing to help mitigate any damage that happens and any nuisance factors, etc. So I know that you're now going, you already used Settlers Trail, and which is further up the map that we can't see, to get from the west side of 44 into the Ferguson Forest and on to the river or wherever. And I understand that there's been signs on Settlers Trail with speed limits, and that it is a snowmobile trail, and encouraging people to drive slowly and drive safely and give way to pedestrians who are on the trail. So
we have ordered some more signs through for this winter, because we were asked to put a 30-kilometer speed limit in there, and make sure that people knew that it was a quiet zone. So we've ordered some more additional signage on that trail.
good, thank you. And as many people have said, I have never personally had a negative experience with snowmobilers. I know just watching them that they do fly by at times, but when anyone's out on the trail, I have always found that they slow down almost to a crawl and wave, and everybody's out enjoying the winter. So I haven't had any personal problems, and unfortunately I guess some others have, but I would like to see us share the use of this valuable resource that we have and make it work. And if it means having some communication and education at the schools, and a media shout out like you mentioned would be a great idea. So and if that green section doesn't lead to a trail, as you said, it doesn't. You have to get all the way to Settlers Trail to be able to cross 44. But I think if we can make access to the school and create a trail would be a good answer.
Councillor Strachan?
Thank you very much for your time here this evening and educating us and answering our questions. I think, so I live not far from the rail trail in a space where it's only used by ATVs and snowmobiles through the winter. We walk on it, as many people do with their dogs, but we know that we're the guests on those trails. And when the snowmobiles come by, I think they're always respectful and they slow down and they're mindful of, people with their dogs or walking there and so on. And, that's not Ferguson Forest, but it is in a space that's probably even more of a Wild West kind of area where the speed limits are, well, I don't know if there is a speed limit anyway, but it's, there's lots of fun to be had there, but we share the space. And I have yet to hear of any serious accidents happening there. So hopefully at the Ferguson Forest, we can find something along the same lines. And I think you've mentioned a few things that are going to be productive and the signage and so on. I think engagement with the school, I think previously when you were asked, you said you hadn't done it entirely or there had been some effort made. Perhaps if you could clarify what...
At the school, you
At the
mean?
school, yeah.
We did put out to our members that if they had children going to St. Michael's to please respect the Ferguson Forest. We made that announcement through our Facebook and with our newsletter. But we have not asked the school to make a presentation or actually went in to do any kind of a presentation or a pamphlet or anything like that with the school at this point.
I would propose, and probably this is more for council to consider and staff, that there could be a way that we could all work together to do something that gets, like you said, gets everybody's attention, whether it's on the media, whether it's on the radio, or just being present one day and, not having it be in any sort of punitive way, but really just to promote that this is a privilege and what these trails are, and, to be able to educate, starting with the students, perhaps others that we could also flag down as they come through. And provide some sort of communication support there. And I think combining bylaw enforcement and the Ferguson Forest folks who are keen to be more vocal partners, I think is how that was stated previously, and everybody coming together, that we could find a way to make this a more positive sort of interaction, that this space can be shared. So I welcome the ideas that you've suggested, but I would also say that perhaps on the municipality side of things that we can have an active role as well to help promote the use of these spaces in a safe way. It is a busy space now, and I think we've all acknowledged that. The last couple of years, COVID has changed a lot of things. Ferguson Forest has been touted as a gem in our community for everybody to use, to be able to get outside and do so safely, and with social distancing and everything like that. And I wouldn't want to see that disappear, not for snowmobilers, not for cross-country skiers, the disc golfers, hikers, you name it. I think it's a wonderful space for everybody to be able to share, and we just need to work through some of the challenges that we have by having more people here, and increased membership is a good thing. It's a blessing, but also a curse, I guess. So anyway, those are my points. So I think this has been a positive discussion, and thank you.
The one thing that I might add with that is that the staff may want to consider, are there other pathways, roadways, or that we might want to send our groomer down to keep them off the fields? If you had, because if they're just looking to ride around and enjoy their snowmobile in the Ferguson Forest, can we entice them to stay in certain areas? Like, I mean, we just groom our path through, and we go up through and back and we're gone. We do it twice a week. And I know the skiers and the walkers appreciate having a pathway that's packed down that they can use. I'm just thinking if there was other areas that we could kind of force them or lead them to give them a play area that's a better choice than what they're doing now. It's a consideration that maybe down the road we could run around a couple of other pathways or roadways or something to give them a play area.
And certainly, I appreciate you bringing that up, Mr. Robinson, because clearly, you know, making sure that there's no damage to the fields, right?
Right.
Is important, and I think that's a valid concern from FFC, and FFC spends a lot of time cultivating trees in that nursery, and it's a major source of revenue. So I don't think we want to diminish in any way the concerns around the status of those fields. And clearly, there are some non-compliant users, whether or not they're coming in through that sort of proposed green area or not is, I guess, the million-dollar question. But it sounds like the appetite of council this evening certainly is to potentially move forward with the proposal as it exists from Ms. Babcock-Cormier, and to have a discussion with FFC and potentially also yourself about mitigation measures. I know, Mr. Doucette, I've already sent an email to you, a copy to Jill Sturdy in the mayor's office to set up that meeting. So perhaps a follow-up discussion after this evening will be, I think, crucial, so that you feel that we find other ways to address your concerns, and maybe more vigilance this year will make a difference. And Mr. Robinson, clearly, you gifted the Winter Trail Committee with incredibly well-used cross-country ski trails in addition to snowmobile trails, and I know that is, as Councillor Sullivan said, incredibly well appreciated. So we want all users, right, to have a positive and safe experience. There is no doubt.
There was one other thing I wanted to mention is in the past, before COVID, on February, first Sunday in February, we always do our charity ride for Easter Seals. Quite often we do it out of the fire hall. And if that continues after COVID is over and we are able to resume our normal practice, we don't follow exactly on that trail system. I mean, we access the fire hall and out, and so we would be contravening the bylaw for that day, so we would have to get some kind of something set aside for that day.
As long as you didn't imperil the fields for the nursery, which I don't think would be your intention, we should be good. But certainly, I guess, something to consider, Ms. Babcock-Cormier. Okay. So up to now, there were no proposed restrictions in the FFC. Like, this bylaw really brings into full enforcement the designated trails, right, for both the snowmobile club and, I guess, snowmobile club in particular. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so council colleagues, I will look for a mover and a seconder for the motion as it exists, unless someone wants to do something else. Councillor Strachan, Deputy Mayor, we moved and seconded consideration of the bylaw, and I understand where, at this point, the motion would move to accept what Ms. Babcock-Cormier has presented for trails. And, you know, I want to say, I really look forward to another conversation, Mr. Doucette and Mr. Herring. I think there's more discussion to be had here, and I think we want to be absolutely responsive to your needs as well, and maybe this year is a bit of a trial and error, and we'll see if we're getting it right, and if we're not, certainly we can revisit it. I see Councillor Barkley has his hand up.
Yeah, I won't be voting for the resolution as laid out. I believe that for the sake of brevity, the blue line should be the only access, and I'm in favor of the red line being prohibited. But I think the green line should not be under consideration. I don't think that should be a snowmobile access route. I think through approving the green line, I think we're basically condoning the bad behavior of certain residents and possibly high school students. So I'm not in support of the resolution.
Deputy Mayor, are you adding something?
Yep, I don't agree with Councillor Barkley, but I don't think we're condoning any bad behavior, because we're putting bylaw in place that says you have to do certain things and follow the rules, right? And we are looking at increasing our vigilance with the OPP and on others, and I think the bylaw has done a great job starting last year and probably will do more, I'm assuming, with this year. So I think it's a good compromise, and I think it's something that needs to be relooked at potentially next year. Try this one, see how it works out. Because I'm very concerned. Like these, you know, I was a snowmobiler too, and I know if they can't access there, they're going to try some other route, which could be, again, a safety issue, and I'm very concerned about that. So that's one of the things, but definitely I think it's a compromise to test this out. let's call it a pilot project, I don't know what you want to call it, but it's new, and I'm looking forward to see how it works out, and if we have to readdress it next year, let's do that.
Okay, wow. Okay. Councillor Sullivan, Councillor Strachan, and Councillor Barclay.
Thank you. As Councillor Barclay said earlier, the functioning and the profit that comes out of the Ferguson Tree Nursery is very important, and to our community and to the Ferguson Forest Centre, period. So it's really important that the crops are protected, and fortunately, when I asked at a board meeting this spring, I was informed that there was no significant damage done this past winter, so that's really good. It wasn't as big a concern as it could have been, and so I'm happy about that. And I think that definitely telling snowmobilers where they can go rather than where they can't go is probably going to be positive reinforcement of where they should be, and creating spaces that they can get where they need or want to go that will not harm the crops is really important. And so whether or not the green space stays open, I really don't know how many snowmobiles use it. Maybe it would be a good thing to do a study, just random count on how many snowmobiles actually use that section. But the other part that I have a concern about is section A, where the little circle is, that access to County Road 44. If someone is coming from in town, that might be a way that they would get in to access the trails rather than having to go down and then across the river. So I think that might be a good place to leave that little gap open at this point. I mean, that could all very well change when County Road 43 is under construction, so.
To be clear, it's part of the proposed access, correct, Ms. Babcock-Cormier?
So it's subject to any MOU between the Snowmobile Club and the FFC. So right now, the bylaw contemplates that if that remains open, it would be permissible for snowmobiles to travel. It wouldn't be restricted itself by the bylaw, but whether or not that trail exists is a matter to be resolved between the FFC and the Snowmobile Club.
Just that little section where the circle A is?
Well, any of the blue line, but in
Okay.
particular, to your point, that section where the A is
Okay.
would be subject to any MOU between FFC and the Snowmobile Club. Okay. So the bylaw itself restricts travel off of any snowmobile trail, and so to the extent that there wasn't a trail there, then the bylaw would restrict travel across that piece. It's only so long as there's a trail there that would be permissible.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Strachan?
I don't want to rehash anything. I'm just going to say on the Green Line portion, I think that the use of the municipal center parking lot for parking vehicles and trailers is an appropriate use, and that green section is for snowmobile access to the trails, not to be considered a trail where, they should be using it in the same way that would be considered for the blue lines. It's really to get from A to the trail, and I think that prohibiting the use of that, I think the parking lot would still be used for people to park in, and they would find a different way to get to the trails. So as Councillor O'Sullivan has mentioned, indicating where they are allowed to go as opposed to blocking more places off, I think is the best and probably safest approach for the equipment and the fields at Ferguson Forest, as well as for the riders themselves. And then they wouldn't be interacting also potentially with cross-country skiers or riding on groomed trails or anything like that. So I think that as it's proposed, it would be a good idea. That Section A piece, snowmobilers like to go where there's food and gas, sort of how they're motivated in a lot of cases. Go to the Red Dot in Osgood and they can tell you all about the business that they get in the wintertime because of snowmobilers. So I think them accessing the other side of 43 via that piece, I mean, pending the conversation between the other two parties, I think is the reason why that exists in this proposal as it stands right now. So hopefully that's part of the consideration, but I think to the green point part, I'm in favor of the proposal as it stands.
Okay. Councillor Barclay?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, council colleagues. I have 2 points to make, and rather than saying condoning bad behavior, I think we have to reinforce good behavior. And as Mr. Robertson described, there are 4 different points that accesses those blue lines. I think he mentioned the water water pollution control plant up at 43. There's many, ways to access the trail. He mentioned most people are trying to get someplace else. So it's only people within the immediate environment, including high school students, that need access on the Green Line. I also would like to reinforce what Councillor O'Sullivan said, and that the Ferguson Tree Nursery is a very valuable resource in Eastern Ontario in terms of the growth of native plants, native trees, and that I think their concerns over the green section, in my mind, should be paramount, because we're only enjoying the Ferguson Forest Centre and the forest trails, the recreational amenities, due in large part to the money raised through the operation of the tree nursery. So I would hate to see that damaged further through bad behavior. And I think we have to reinforce what the Kemptville Snowmobile Club representative, Mr. Robinson, said, that there are 4 other points within the Ferguson Forest area that they can access the trail. Thank you.
There is a 12-month road safety campaign, and I would suggest that January or February potentially be used to talk about snowmobile safety and sharing pathways, trailways, et cetera, et cetera. I thank everyone for their engagement. I think a lot has been said, and we are always open and welcome to revisit the discussion this evening. I see all perspectives, and I think we'll call the question. All in favor of the motion as moved and seconded? Good. Opposed? Good. Thank you. Okay, motion carries. Thanks to staff who I know have been patiently waiting for other reports, and we'll take a 5-minute break. Thanks. Okay, colleagues, we are back. We are streaming, is that correct? Okay, excellent. Thank you for that robust discussion on our last item. We are reconvening and inviting Mr. Guy. No, sorry, Ms. Martin is here to talk about a motion from the Agricultural and Rural Affairs Advisory Committee on which Councillor Barclay and I sit. So, Ms. Martin, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. If we can just advance the slide, please. So at the September Agriculture and Rural Affairs Committee meeting, the committee moved a motion, a resolution, sorry, to council that council directs staff to look into the feasibility of a rural and agricultural community improvement plan to be implemented in the 2022 budget year. Next slide, please. So I'm certain that council at this point is well aware of what a community improvement plan is, but for the sake of the general public, a community improvement plan is a planning tool that provides financial incentives to local businesses and property owners. Incentives can be in the form of grants. They can offset the cost of development charges or development fees, and they can assist in such matters as upgrading facades or installing new signage. Incentives can also be in the form of loans or tax increment programs, and the intent of community improvement programs are to assist in the revitalization and business support in general. Currently North Grenville has a community improvement plan in place for the downtown, as we discussed earlier this evening. And as part of the request in regards to a feasibility study, staff would develop a work plan, identify key programs that should be included as part of a rural agricultural community improvement plan, and provide an assessment as to the budgeted funds that would be required to make the program successful. There are examples across Ontario of rural community improvement plans, so there's definitely a wealth of knowledge to draw from. But at this time, the recommendation from the committee was to have staff look at the feasibility aspect of implementing one. So we would have to look at what currently exists out in the rural area and agricultural area in regards to businesses, but as well as, you know, what the scope of the program would that should be supported, which would then feed into how much funds should be budgeted. And I believe that is it. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor Barclay, you and I think we're part of this discussion. Any comments on this one?
Yeah, just a request that once a draft of this report is available, that it's shared with the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee. And just a clarification that any budget attached to the recommendations coming from your department would be for the 2023 budget year. Is that correct?
Through your worship to Councillor Barclay, I believe the intent would be that it would be for the 2022 budget year, so they were looking for a relatively short timeline for it being implemented.
Just to follow up, so what's the timeline in terms of delivering a report for consideration in the budget? I would imagine instantaneously.
Through your worship to Councillor Barclay, yes, it would be as soon as possible report, given that we are currently going through the budget process. Staff could just do a feasibility study as to what is out there in regards to existing community improvement plans and recommend a budgeted amount. And further development of a community improvement plan would occur as part of the 2022 work plan for the department.
Don't fight that, Councillor Barclay. Let's just go with that.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
It's fine with me. I'm just, so we expect to see it in December or early January?
The intent would be to bring forward a feasibility report as soon as possible as part of the budget deliberations. So December, January, that would still need to be established, but it would have to be in short order given the present date and just the current budget preparations underway.
And I do note, Ms. Martin, in your report, there are many examples across Ontario of community improvement plans that are geared towards rural and agricultural developments. This is not something that North Grenville is pioneering in any respect. I believe you have lots of best practices and examples on which to draw. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Worship. Okay.
So with that in mind, I think Ms. Martin can act in an expeditious fashion. Councillor Barclay, Councillor Strachan, apologies. Thank you for your hand.
Just for clarification, so this is rural and agricultural, so it could be buildings in much in the same sense as what we're seeing in the downtown core to improve the look at the street side of things, but the agricultural piece is for the similar kind of thing, but for the farms and so on. Is that the intent with that piece, the agricultural portion?
Through your worship to Councillor Strachan, during discussions and deliberations at the committee, I think the part of the conversation was what kind of supports could be given to existing agricultural operations in regards to like livestock facilities. Typically programs related to community improvement plans in the agricultural area would be for on-farm diversified uses or agriculture related uses, so your commercial or industrial related operations that would support like a farm itself. So farm gate sales, where you might have somebody who sets up a farm store where they sell, whether it's honey or other products, eggs, or products they make from their garden or their fields. So that's a type of program in the agricultural area that would be related to a agricultural operation.
So the scope of it could be from very small up to very large, effectively.
That is correct. There are many examples in rural and agricultural CIPs that could look at, vacant buildings. You might have some rural commercial or industrial uses that have been sitting dormant and vacant. There are some municipalities and even counties that provide large sums of money to reimagine and renovate these buildings for a second use.
So in light of the fact that my family runs some smaller farming kind of operations, I should have declared a disclosure of interest. So I will not be voting on this one, and I will refrain from saying anything else on this topic. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Strachan, for your vigilance in that regard. Anything else, colleagues? Seeing none, Councillor Barkley, would you like to move this motion, please? Okay. And who would like to second? Councillor Sullivan? Excellent. So we're good? Okay. So the motion is that Council receives the resolution from the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee in regards to the rural and agricultural CIP and directs staff to investigate the feasibility of a rural and ag CIP to be implemented in the 2022 budget year. Sounds good to me. I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Martin, for being here. Okay, next on our agenda is the waste disposal site environmental monitoring reports. Those were accepted as part of the consent agenda. So now we have the pleasure of inviting Mr. Guy to come down. He is Director of Parks and Rec, and he will be speaking to an exciting sponsorship agreement and important improvements to the Riverside Park project. Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Guy.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Good evening, members of council. The report and presentation that I'm going to give at this point is a sponsorship agreement with Enbridge Gas to create the Enbridge Courtyard at Riverside Park. Next slide, please. So Enbridge Gas expressed interest in investing in a recreation project in North Grenville as they are looking to invest in communities they serve. A meeting was held with members of council and recreation staff with Enbridge Gas to discuss potential ideas to submit to Enbridge. Recreation staff provided Enbridge Gas with some potential projects and ideas to Some of the projects were a new pump track at Riverside Park. There's been feedback from the community that current skate park requires rehabilitation, and transforming it to a pump track was recommended. A pump track is usually constructed of asphalt or concrete. Another consideration was a new dock at the downtown location of the existing dock. The current dock downtown does not lend itself to getting canoes and kayaks in the water, and it's also nearing the end of its useful life. Third idea was the roof structure at the proposed new outdoor rink at Riverside Park. The design for the new outdoor rink will include a provision for a future roof. And the last idea was a courtyard idea at Riverside Park. The courtyard would include bike racks, a bike repair station, picnic tables, individual shade structures, outdoor grills, park benches, and the addition of trees. This would complement the new amenities at Riverside Park and enhance the outdoor pool experience for users. Next slide, please. Enbridge considered all of the options we provided them, and they rated the Enbridge Courtyard at Riverside Park as their #1 choice. They agreed to commit to $50,000 to the project over 2 years, and the sponsorship agreement includes a payment schedule where they would commit $25,000 in 2021 and $25,000 in 2022. These funds will not likely be expensed until 2023 due to the construction of the larger park project. So we would work with the finance department to put those funds in a reserve account so they will be used for this particular project. The terms of the agreement, the estimated life on some of the proposed amenities is likely about 20 years. So Enbridge would have sole naming rights for 20 years beginning in 2023. This follows the procedures of bylaw 7212, establishing a naming rights policy which governs the naming of any corporate asset, including parks, open spaces, facilities, roads, or other municipal buildings or properties. The Enbridge Courtyard or Riverside Park would be unveiled in 2023. This would coincide with the completion of the bigger Riverside Park project. I apologize to council, I don't have a conceptual idea of what the courtyard would look like, but it's something that staff would work on, and we can provide those kind of details at a future meeting. So it's recommended that we enter into the sponsorship agreement with Enbridge Gas for a $50,000 investment made for the Enbridge Courtyard at Riverside Park. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Guy? Sorry, council, any questions? None? I should note, Mr. Guy, as you and I know, Enbridge Gas chose one community in 2022 to give a fairly significant sponsorship to, and they chose North Grenville. I think we landed on their radar for a number of different reasons, including some ongoing discussions about natural gas, and they alerted us to a community fund. And through a series of conversations, it became obvious that I think with the recognition that North Grenville had secured the title of Canada's most active community, among some other things, they felt that this was a very worthwhile investment. So a small feature overall in terms of what's happening at Riverside, but nonetheless, I think a well-utilized space, and we're grateful to Enbridge that they chose, again, it's just one community every couple of years for a sizable sponsorship contribution. So nice to see this come to fruition, Mr. Guy. I'll look for a mover and a seconder then. Oh, Councillor Sullivan, you have a question? You're just moving. Deputy Mayor, you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Sorry, just a quick question.
Yes.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Director Guy, the courtyard envision between you and Enbridge, is that the $50,000 would cover the entire project, or would just subsidize? We would subsidize it potentially in the future, to finish the build or whatever they are planning on.
Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor McManaman. We haven't done a detailed assessment of some of the amenities that we're going to look to put in the courtyard, such as the individual shade structures, the bike repair station, bike racks. It would be our intention to spend the entire $50K on that area, and also put a sign it respecting that Enbridge donated provided the $50,000 to create the courtyard. So it would be our idea that we would spend the entire $50K on that particular project.
Okay, I guess my question was, is it going to be budgeted so that the project is $50,000 period, or are we going to have to add funds on top of? What's your sense?
Hard to say at this point. I think it would be my idea that it would only be from the $50,000 from Enbridge, that the municipality would not be subsidizing it in any way. Certainly if, as I mentioned, there's a 20-year agreement. If we plant trees as part of the Enbridge Courtyard and a tree dies within a year or two, then we would not be going back to Enbridge and asking them to replace the tree. We would replace the tree ourselves.
My understanding is that Enbridge had every intention of covering the costs, and the municipality would scope the courtyard to the contribution that was provided. So I'd be surprised if it went beyond that. I would be surprised if it went beyond the 50,000, given that you know what you have to work with, and some of the amenities are not expensive.
Yeah, we would plan the,
No.
the courtyard based on the $50,000 we received, and hopefully, you know, not to go over that.
Okay. Anything else, colleagues? Okay. Do we have a mover? Have we moved it yet? Councillor Sullivan, thank you, Councillor Sullivan. And I know, Mr. Guy, you've been fielding a number of different inquiries, in part on the basis of our title, our title of Canada's most active community. I don't know if there are any others in the woodwork at this time. Can you speak to whether or not you're having any other sponsorship discussions right now?
For the bigger park project?
Or
You're
generally in terms of recreation and amenities in North Grenville when it comes to Parks and Rec?
Not at this time, Madam Mayor. We haven't had any discussions with any other
Okay.
organizations or corporations regarding any funding. Sometimes they sort of fall on our lap. We don't, we do some canvassing in terms of advertising within the municipal center in terms of rink board ads or ads in our arena lobby. I think there was a number of years ago that we did go out and do some promotion of some of our amenities within this facility in terms of looking for potential naming rights sponsors. That was a few years back that we canvassed and went out and did some, you know, knocking on doors, but it's not a general thing or not a regular thing that the Parks and Rec Department does.
Okay. So I have a mover. Can I get a seconder for this motion? Thank you, Deputy Mayor. The motion is before you, Council, to authorize the entering into the agreement and enter the Director of Parks Rec and Culture to execute the agreement. So I'll call the question. All in favor? Good, thank you. And then you can turn to your second item, Mr. Guy.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the next report I have is an information report on the Riverside Park project. It's to update Council and the public on the status of the Riverside Park project. And a key, within this project, it was a key recommendation in the 2020 Parks and Rec Master Plan to look at adding some new amenities to Riverside Park, specifically a new accessible washroom change room facility, a new splash pad, and an outdoor rink facility. Next slide. So key dates to date, what has been done now, what is happening now, and what is coming. So what has been done, feasibility study was completed by WSP Consultants for the provisions of a new building, a splash pad, and a new outdoor rink facility within Riverside Park. Architecture 49 was hired to complete detailed design and construction tender. The completion date for that is January 2022. At that time, we'll hire a proponent to complete the construction. That will be done at the end of, what says here, the end of 2021, but it'll actually be the beginning of 2022. Construction hopefully to begin spring 2022 and a full completion of the project in the fall of 2022. You'll see on the screen that's a concept plan of what it would look like. The round figure is the splash pad, the rectangular is the new outdoor rink, and on the bottom side is the addition to the existing pool building. Next slide, please. So just a bit more information on the splash pad, the round one. It's roughly 206 meters squared. The current Equinel splash pad that we have is approximately 95 meters squared, so it's quite a bit larger than the one at Equinel. We're looking at a recirculating system. It's more expensive to operate, but it's more efficient for the overall water treatment plant, not to just let all that water go to waste. The splash pad would include some baseline features as well as some interactive features. And you'll see tomorrow there will be one of our promotional boards will show a more detailed description of the splash pad. In order to construct the new splash pad and outdoor rink. There has to be some infrastructure works done. We're going to need a new 3-inch water line to be installed from Rubin Crescent to the rink, splash pad, and the existing pool. The wastewater will tie into the existing lines within the park. The storm will go to the existing drains and natural runoff of the park, and there'll be a new meter to service the new splash pad and outdoor rink. The outdoor rink, the rectangular, we're looking at a 50 by 100 concrete surface. As I mentioned, it'll be designed for the provision of a roof structure. We're probably the approximate cost of that, we're looking at probably $75,000. I know that the consultant is working with Custom Ice in terms of a refrigeration system. We have been in contact with Simcoe Refrigeration, who looks after our ice here at the Municipal Center. They have given us a ballpark figure of around $600,000 to install in a refrigeration system. Custom Ice is cheaper than that, but probably has a shorter life expectancy. So we'll do our homework on that, and the consultant will provide some recommendations how to move forward with that. In terms of the building, I don't know if I know how to use this thing properly. Probably better if I get help.
We're just going to check your, to make sure that it's on.
You just click this way to move forward and this way to move.
Okay. So this is the existing buildings on this side. So the plan is to completely renovate the entire interior of the existing building. So up in the corner here is the existing pump room for the outdoor pool. That will remain the same. This will become our chemical storage area. This purple area will be completely storage. This is the doors leading into the existing building. This whole area is a staff area. One of the things that we don't have at the existing pool building, when we have youth that register for Bronze Medallion, Bronze Cross Course, there is a classroom portion to that. So this will allow us to set up a bit of a classroom style in there for those courses. This is a staff office for our outdoor pool coordinator, and these are washrooms for the staff. This area here is where the front counter will be. So people will enter, this is a foyer area, people will enter here, and they will, if they're paying for public swim, we'll have a staff here, and then they will go through, there'll be a gate here where they'll go through to the pool, or if they want to go straight on to the splash pad. These two rooms here are both family change rooms. They will be accessible family change rooms. There's a sink and a toilet in each. And then this side is the brand new facility. And it'll be a heated facility that will be used year round for the outdoor rink. So this is a janitor's closet here. This is a universal change room. It'll also have a changing table for babies. These are washrooms, toilets, and urinals. This is the showers, and these are the change rooms here. And there's access to these change rooms. There's a door here, and there's a door here. So people that are using the baseball diamonds, using the playground, they can access this either through these doors, or they can come through the foyer here and go through the set of, I'm not sure if there's going to be actual doors there. There are doors that lead into each side of this building. This may be left open. I have to get clarification on that. This is the mechanical room for the splash pad, and this is the mechanical room for the outdoor rink. And this is where the refrigeration system would sit for the outdoor rink facility. If you want to go to the Next slide. So this is the architecture drawing or conceptual drawing for the building. So the idea would be to remove the roof from the existing building and build a completely new roof that would go over the entire, both buildings from one end to the other. This here is where the refrigeration units would sit. So this is more of a fenced-in area. I can tell you that the new building is about 1,510 square feet. The existing building is a little over 2,000 square feet. In terms of construction, the consultant is looking at a block wall type construction or a tilt-up construction where they construct concrete slabs and then they basically push them up and make them into walls. They're looking at various heating options, in-floor radiant heat, ceiling heaters, or potential for a gas furnace. And the roof would be steel in nature. Next slide, please. So that's just another drawing. So this is if you're coming in from, oh, sorry, what did I do there? Is that me? Oh yeah, I don't need to hit this thing anymore. So this, thanks Heather. This is, if you're coming in from the parking lot or you're arriving, walking from, basically from the Armory or from Rubin Crescent, this would be the front of the building. And that's the foyer, the area in the middle that you would walk through to go on either side of the building. And I believe that is the end of my report. Be happy to answer any questions.
Deputy Mayor?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a question, Director Guy. The Rink, great winter, and it'll, because they're going to have chiller, it's going to take us into the shoulder seasons as well. That's what we're hoping, anyways. And potential roof in the future for protection of the ice that helps the ice to last as well. But I guess in the summer too that we can use that. So have you plans, I think we talked about this early on, but plans to have like basketball hoops or pickleball marked on the rink so that the rink is actually used all year round?
Through you, Your Worship, to Deputy Mayor McManaman. Absolutely. I think there's a number of activities that can be used on the outdoor rink during the summer months. It certainly can be used for special events, i.e. Canada Day. For activities, beer garden as an example. We do plan on putting up some basketball courts that can be used for basketball, it can be used for ball hockey, and even pickleball. Absolutely, there'd be a number of opportunities to use that year round for sure.
Councillor Sullivan?
Thank you. One other question, Director Guy. For the outdoor facility for the rink, is there any plan to have a space where people could change into their skates and leave their boots, like the shed, for example, that was down at Curry Park, just open on kind of like a lean-to almost?
Heather, can you put up that one, this slide, please? So, yes, thank you.
Okay.
As I mentioned, right here, this building will be open year-round. So, anyone using the ice facility will be able to enter right here, and these are the change rooms that they'll be able to access to put on their skates, and it'll be heated. Both sides. So. That would be the area where kids, families can go and they can put their skates on, take them off, and then they would head out to the arena.
So rubber mats like on the floors then?
Yeah.
Coming in and out?
Exactly.
Okay, great idea. Thank you. It's very exciting.
Councillor Strachan, Councillor Barkley, and then I'll put myself on the list. Go ahead.
I think this is a fabulous improvement. I have one question about the area around the pool. It was, and I think we may have covered this in a previous presentation and I can't recall. The area that's designated for tents that, you know, people could put up during a swim meet and so on. So there's a 10 by 10 space. It's just the space that's allocated. There's no structure or anything like that, that are structures that are put in place there, are there?
Through you, Your Worship, Councillor Strachan. There is quite a bit of space here. We've allotted, you know, probably at least 15 feet of space in this area for people to sit around, you know, put up tents when the swim meet is going on. So that we've made considerations for that. And if you see the 3 red circles here, that's kind of where the Enbridge Courtyard would go, and it probably will leak into the west end of the pool as well, where we would set up some of the amenities, individual shade structures, picnic tables and whatnot, park benches in this area, and probably in this area here as well.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Barkley?
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Director Guy. So I understand from the Deputy Mayor's question that we're constructing the ice surface for a future roof. That would be like a phase 2. Is it my understanding that the refrigeration would also be part of phase 2? That we're creating space for it, but it may not happen until we find $600,000?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Barkley. At this time, we're preparing that we'll have the refrigeration plant as part of the phase 1, but it will come down to cost. Once we have a more exact number of what the costs are going to be, it may be something that has to come back to council for approval. But at this time, we would like to include the refrigeration unit as part of the original phase because it does lend itself to a much longer season. I understand there's, as I mentioned, there's a significant cost to doing this, but I've seen over the years with the kind of winters that we have now, it's really hit and miss in terms of how long your ice season can be. And I think it's, although an expensive investment, I think it's a worthwhile investment if we can do it to include it in phase 1. But, once we have more of a truer idea of what our costs are looking like, I'll certainly bring that back to council. And I can tell you that the consultant from Architect 49 is, he's very cognizant of costs for this project, and he's trying to, do his best to source out the most efficient ways in terms of building this building and the other parts of the project.
Just to follow up, my issue is not with refrigeration, and I think it's absolutely essential with a shortened season as we're experiencing, but with the cost. And I seem to recall that funding for this is in the area of $750,000 from the municipality. So will we have, if we went forward with the refrigeration, would there be enough funds to complete the rest of the project?
What we had budgeted was $750,000 in 2021, as well as $750,000 in 2022.
Okay, thank you.
So I'll be coming back in 2022 with a more, hopefully a closer number to what we're looking at.
Well, no, that answer takes the pressure off. Thanks.
Well, and I'd like to remind council this is literally a once-in-a-century investment in terms of the kind of rehabilitation, the additional amenities for what I call North Grenville Central Park. We are also making some investments in kind of, or we plan to, I believe, there will be some additional investments in hamlet parks or other parks in rural subdivisions, et cetera. And we're working very hard, Councillor Sullivan and I, and planning team and Parks and Rec team, to make sure that as newer neighborhoods come online, they have their own parks. But from my perspective, this is a once-in-a-century investment. And making sure that we can maximize use throughout all 4 seasons, I think, is fairly imperative to the success of this project, because what we see now, as you know, is Riverside Park with maybe 4 to 5 months use, more or less. And then we are really unable to, use what is tremendous green space in our community. And It's a wonderful park, but it does need some significant investment, and we haven't seen that in a number of decades now. So I look forward to the further discussion on numbers, Mr. Guy, but I do commend you for including refrigeration in at this stage. I expect it's pretty integral to the success of that outdoor rink in terms of ensuring that it gets lots of use. Councillor Barclay?
Sorry, just a final question on the financing of it, and I must say that this is long overdue, and I'm sure I concur that it's a investment for many years to come. It's long overdue. But what portion of that 1.5 million comes from DC development charges? Do you know the breakdown, and how much comes from general taxation?
Thanks for the question, Councillor Barclay. I'd have to get back to you on that. I think some of this certainly can be attributed to growth in the community. So, you know, without being able to give you a definite answer, I feel fairly strongly that some of it is certainly DC eligible. What the breakdown is, it's probably something that I can provide a more clear answer once we get into our more detailed budget discussions.
That would be appreciated. Thanks.
Great. I reflect on the fact that we'll spend $35 million expanding our water treatment facility, which is absolutely crucial. So when you look at what pales in comparison in terms of a more modest but nonetheless sizable expenditure, I'm hopeful we can make it happen. Councillor Strachan?
I would be remiss if I didn't ask something about the environmental side of things. Has that been taken into consideration in the design to find, I know you talked about the recirculating for the water on the splash pad. Have other aspects of this design been looked at through an environmental impact lens?
It's certainly, thanks for the question, Councillor Strachan. It's certainly been noted with the consultant to look at any kind of environmental efficiencies, green efficiencies that can be made, specifically with the building itself. So yes, that is definitely being looked at.
Okay, thank you. I'd appreciate when we get the follow-up to hear about some of those areas that are being considered. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Anything else? Seeing nothing, I'll look for...
I just have one.
Oh, of course. Yeah,
one thing
go
to
ahead.
add. I know that, Madam Mayor, you asked me about this, and I thought it would be worthy to bring up. It is our plan to have a pool program in 2022. Mm-hmm. Yeah. How we're going to achieve that is something that we will work very closely with the consultant and whoever ends up getting the construction. It would be my thought that the existing building would stay intact while the new building is being built, so that we can run our pool program in 2022. But I will, we'll work with the team to ensure that we can have a program next summer. I think it's very important that we continue with our swimming lesson program.
Good, thank you. And we appreciate you putting that out there, because we know we'll get lots of questions, and the swim team and other swim programs are so heavily subscribed. Okay, I'll look for a mover and seconder for this. Councillor Strachan, Councillor O'Sullivan. And that is that Council received the report titled Riverside Park Project Update for information purposes. I'll call the question. Good, thank you. And I'll remind Council that tomorrow morning, some of the conceptual designs, in more general terms, will be presented at Riverside Park to members of the media, so that we can share the wonderful news. I think, Mr. Guy, that's it for you? That's it for you this evening? Is that right? Okay, awesome.
Sorry, yes it is.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Then I think Mr. Chief Oakham has been patiently waiting on firefighter training material grants. Thank you, Chief Oakham. I'm sure you may have had better things to do this evening than sit through 2.5 hours, but here we are. And we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, Mr. Guy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Council. Good evening to you. The report before Council this evening is an information report. The North Grenville Fire Service is a successful recipient of the Safe Community Project Assist Firefighter Training Material Grant. Next slide, please. Yes, great news with Director Guy on Enbridge. they're continuing their investment in our community with this grant. This year, the Safe Community Project Assist campaign was developed between the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council and Enbridge Gas Incorporated. These two organizations got together and created a partnership in 2012. At that time, they formed what was called Project Assist grant program. It is now developed into the program that we're speaking of this evening. Safe Community Project Assist program is intended to supplement existing firefighter training in communities where Enbridge operates. This generous contribution assists volunteer and composite fire departments to acquire educational materials directly from the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council. Next slide. Enbridge Gas Incorporated is Canada's largest natural gas storage, transmission, and distribution company. Enbridge Gas places priority on safety and prides itself as a supporter of the Ontario Fire Services. This year, Enbridge Gas is donating $250,000 towards the Safe Community Project Assist program. The $250,000 will be equally split between 50 recipient Ontario fire departments. Each recipient fire department will receive $5,000 in the form of a credit with the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council. This credit can be used to acquire firefighter training materials from the distribution center. These training materials will be shipped directly to the recipient fire department. Next slide. The Fire Protection and Prevention Act authorizes the establishment of the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council, also known as the Council. They are a registered charity in Ontario. The Council was established in 1993 and continues to operate today. The Council consists of a board of directors and a chairperson who is the Ontario Fire Marshal. The objective of the Council is to promote fire safety in Ontario, produce and distribute materials for public education, and with respect to fire safety, and to endorse training, education, and fire prevention activities in Ontario. The Council maintains its distribution centre, which is located near North Grenville, located in Brockville, Ontario. The North Grenville Fire Service is an active member with the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council. Next slide, please. The Safe Community Project Assist program sets out eligibility requirements for an Ontario Fire Department which they can apply. The North Grenville Fire Service meets all of the eligibility requirements. The fire chief submitted a grant application to the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council for this grant this year. The council notified us of our grant being approved for the North Grenville Fire Service as one of the 50 recipient fire departments in Ontario for this year's program. So therefore, the North Grenville Fire Service will be provided with a $5,000 credit with the Fire Marshal's Public Safety Council to acquire firefighter training materials for our department. Next slide. This slide just provides an example of just some of the potential resources that we can order under our grant program. They include instructor guides for our instructors. They provide participant workbooks for the firefighters to do classroom work. You can also acquire DVDs. They are lesson plans that the firefighters can observe and learn from. We can also order codes and standards that we utilize in the fire service and various other subject matters, including various firefighter curriculum. Publications include IFSTA. IFSTA is the International Fire Service Training Association, Jones and Bartlett Publications, and NFPA Publications, all widely used by fire services in Ontario and across Canada. And that is my presentation this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well done, Chief Oakham. Good work. It's nice to see things like this happen, and clearly Enbridge is very active in certain fields. I recognize Councillor Strachan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think, Chief Oakham, this is a very good opportunity. I think it's important to note that grant and funding opportunities for firefighting and writ large is few and far between, and generally the only way that you're funded are is through taxation. So I would assume that if you hadn't received this funding, then in order to get up-to-date training materials and so on, that would have come out of the fire departments through the director's budget. Is that correct, through the taxation?
Yes, that's correct. We would be budgeting for training materials through our annual operating budget. That's correct.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other questions, colleagues? Good. It's great to see your investment in continuous training. I know it's not always easy to retain a dedicated volunteer force at this time, though we have many dedicated members, but I know, you're continuously recruiting, and likely that training imperative, right, is ongoing, not just one-offs. You likely have to do it almost every few months at this stage. Is that right?
Training is probably one of the largest commitments that we require, excuse me, of the volunteers. We do weekly training. Every Monday night is regular training, and there's additional training where they can attend training centers or weekend training if we have specialized training. So it's a large part of their dedication to the community.
Okay. And how many volunteer firefighters would you have right now?
So our roster is 40, and we're hovering. We have a few maybe potential retirements coming in the near future, but we're around 40 members.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you. Councillor Strachan, would you like to move? Thank you. And I'll look for a seconder on this side of the House. Councillor Barkley, thank you. And that is that Council received the report entitled Firefighter Training Material Grant, courtesy of Enbridge for information purposes. Congrats once again, Chief Oakham. I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Thank you. Okay. And I think we are moving now to the confirmation bylaw. Ms. Backward-Cormier. Or before we do that, we are looking for any questions from members of our community or the media.
So first, there's the notice of motions.
Indeed. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll go to notice of motions. I believe, Councillor Barkley, you have a notice? And simply you were giving notice this evening, so no substantive discussion. You were just giving notice.
Yeah, no, at the next possible meeting, according to clerk's schedule, I intend to present the following motion. To direct staff to explore the viability of rehabilitating the Township Hall in Oxford Mills for public use, including but not limited to an arts hub concept and the funding opportunities available. Be happy to give a written copy of that to the clerk so she can record it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Timely. We look forward to more discussion. Any other notices of motion this evening? Seeing none, I will then move on to period for questions from the public, from members of our community and the media. Have you received anything by email, Ms. Backward-Cormier?
I confirm that I have not, Your Worship.
Okay. Anything out there by members of the community? Excellent. Okay, thank you. You're always welcome, as you know. We always appreciate questions. And if there are none arising, then we'll look to the confirmation bylaw. That is that bylaw 11621 to confirm the proceedings of council at its regular meeting held on November 16th be adopted and passed. I'll look for a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Sullivan, Deputy Mayor, thank you. I'll call the question. All in favor? I always wonder, why is there a confirmation bylaw? Is it to ratify the proceedings of council effectively? Okay, just in case there's a lack of clarity on what transpired in the heady days of very rowdy council meetings, perhaps. That's another point.
Yes.
Good. So we've done that, and I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Barclay, Councillor Stracan.
Sorry, was the confirmation bylaw, was
Oh,
that-
I'm sorry.
Did you call the question?
I didn't call the question. All in favor? I clearly don't want to confirm. Thank you. Thank you. I'm just imagining council meetings of another era where perhaps, yes, the need for confirmation was more obvious than it seems today. All right. And then we have, I think, who was moving and seconding adjournment? All right, Strachan and Barclay, and that is to adjourn at, someone tell me the time, 9:20? 9:20 p.m. I'll call the question. All in favor? Good. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.